Good afternoon. I hope everyone's been having a fantastic week. I know I have, and it has been interesting. We are already in the middle of June. Can you believe it? I can't. It's like I blinked and May just went on its merry way, and in a couple weeks we will be enjoying the 4th of July. So, with that being said, for today's episode, since we are getting closer and closer to the end of spring animes, and yes, I do mean spring, I wanted to talk about anime. Explain how anime sessions work, and how I usually decide on what anime to choose so I can help those who aren't too familiar with anime and ease them into the whole anime genre. Now, I will say this isn't going to be a history of anime. That will be for a later episode. I'm just going to explain some of the basics so someone with not a big understanding of anime can get a basic understanding. Nothing so crazy. And you will kind of get a little peek at what I do when I'm choosing anime, especially since the summer sessions are usually when you'll have new IP come out and usually don't get second or third seasons of anime you usually watch. So, with that being said, for those of you unfamiliar, anime, unlike American cartoons, are usually adaptations of manga, which are similar to American comics. And before someone there attacks me about how it's not really, this is just for comparisons, and I'm comparing it to American comics because that's usually the most relatable thing I can think of that will get the layman's understanding of what exactly anime is. Now, there is original anime where it's like an original idea. They don't take it from a manga, but honestly, that's usually very rare. Most of the time, about 90%, anime is an adaptation from the manga. Like I said, it does happen when there is an original anime, but it's not as often as you think. Now, another thing to understand is that when a manga is being adapted to anime, the manga can still be ongoing and not be finished. This is actually extremely common. And before you ask, sometimes the manga is so far ahead that the anime can have multiple seasons before it even catches up to the manga. Or it can only take one season, usually 24 episodes, before the anime catches up. It's usually a 50-50 shot when it comes to that. And if the manga is extremely popular, it's usually going to get a sooner adaptation and the one season's going to catch up way ahead. Now, in the past, when this usually happened, the anime usually went on its own direction. But now, that's usually not the case. So, for example, Full Metal Alchemist, the original anime, it followed the manga until a certain point, but then the manga wasn't finished and it had already caught up. So what it did instead was that it branched off into its own little thing. And it just had an alternate ending. It was not bad, but it didn't follow the manga, so if you read the manga and watched the original Full Metal Alchemist, you would be extremely confused, which is why you have Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which followed the manga to the T and even included the ending. Another example of this would be Hellsing. Hellsing, the original, went in its own thing because, one, the manga was still ongoing, and then you had Hellsing Ultimate, which followed the manga because by then, when it was being adapted, everything was finished. So, like I said, it's 50-50 when it happens, and if it does, back in the past, they would branch out, but nowadays not so much. What they will usually do is wait years until there's enough material for them to adapt. That's why sometimes an anime will have an old-looking animation in one season, and then modern, great-looking animation in the next season. And that's usually because there's a huge time gap. Now, with that being said, if the animation for one season looks different than the other, it's usually sometimes not a time gap. If it's 1 year and then maybe a couple years later, sometimes the original studio drops the adaptation and they're being animated by another, which again is very common. One example of this would be One Punch Man. I forgot which studio animated the original one, but when it came to the second studio, it had to be adapted by another because that anime studio was too busy adapting a bunch of other anime. Now, when it comes to anime, if you are extremely, and I mean extremely lucky, during the anime's first season, it will get renewed for season 2, and basically you'll only have to wait a year until the next season arises. Again, if you're extremely lucky, because sometimes, well, not sometimes, most of the time, you have to wait a couple of years because that, again, a studio either doesn't have enough material to make a second season, or another thing is they just have too much on their plate, so they have to wait a couple years until they have more time to free up for them to adapt the next season. Konosuba is a great example of this. Fantastic comedy anime. But now, the years between season 2 and season 3, I want to say is at least 4 years. And it wasn't because they didn't have enough material. The studio was just busy with other stuff. So again, you have to be extremely lucky if the anime is still ongoing to have back-to-back years of seasons. It doesn't happen often, and it leaves us anime watchers just angry because we want more, but we're going to have to wait. Now, when it comes to the release dates for these anime, it's very different in the United States because in the United States, we usually have, we have shows that are going to premiere in the spring. We have shows that are going to premiere in the fall. When it comes to anime, that's extremely different. They're usually scheduled with the seasons. Since each anime schedule is divided into 4 seasons, we have 4 sessions for anime per year. Spring, which is usually April to June, summer, which is usually July to September, fall, which is usually October through December, and finally winter, which is January to March. Now you're probably asking yourself why they have it scheduled like this. Now, it's actually interesting because you would think that they would have this schedule based around the school year and to make sure they keep track of everything. But in reality, they're actually scheduled around the 4 quarters of the year. So ironically to business. So if you Google quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the year, you're going to find that that schedule is extremely similar or exactly the same to anime schedule, which is actually kind of interesting and makes sense since when it comes to Japanese, they're very business oriented. Everything has to be on a set schedule. So making anime release dates like this is very common. Now, you will have outliers to this because usually an anime will have 13 episodes, but sometimes they will be approved for 24. So they're just going to keep on airing, so on and so forth until they get through their 24. Sometimes they'll have a week or 2 off, or they'll just continuously just air and air and air. Or what will happen is that during the middle of the quarter, they will release the anime. So it will not only start in the middle of the quarter, but end in the middle of another quarter. It's very weird, and it's kind of 50-50 when this will happen. One good example of this is My Hero Academia. It started kind of late in the for the spring session, so it's going to end during the summer session in the middle of it. Now, this particular spring anime lineup has been fantastic. We've had great shows like Reincarnated as a Slime Season 3, Kaiju number 8, which is fantastic, Black Butler Season 4, the public school arc, Konosuba Season 3, My Hero Academia Season 7, Moonlight Fantasy Season 2, Jobless Reincarnation Season 2, and many other great anime. And this is not a surprise. When it comes to anime release, both spring and fall usually have a fantastic lineup, while summer and winter usually have okay lineup, but it's usually packed with unknown anime and first adaptations, like first-time adaptations. So if you're a manga reader, you're going to love this era because it might mean that your favorite manga is going to be adapted. If you're not a manga reader, you're just going to be playing Russian roulette on what to watch because, again, new IP, you're not familiar with it, so you're going to have to take the risk and see which ones you like. Now, for me, the only summer anime that I'm looking forward to is the Suicide Squad anime, which is going to be airing in July because I'm very familiar with DC, and I'm looking forward to see how they work this isekai anime. And you're probably wondering how I'm going to be choosing my anime and what to watch for the summer session. Because for me, I'm extremely picky. And trust me, I'm not the only one who's picky when it comes to watching anime. Everyone has their different methods of choosing. again, when it comes to me, I want to say I'm more in the pickier session than any other person, because even though I love anime, like I love it, watching it is always fun and I can't wait to see what stories they tell, they can sometimes be a bit much, especially when it comes to sexualizing the female characters. It really gets bad with some anime. It just gets insane where I just have to turn it off because I'm like, okay, somebody spent way too much time indoors. And when it comes to choosing my anime, I usually give it about 2 episodes to try to hook me. If I usually find that there's nothing but fan service, I don't even bother to continue with it. And you know what? I get it. Some people like to watch anime for the fan service. I'm not judging you. Trust me, I'm not judging you. But stuff like that just bores me. And here's the thing, when it comes to anime, they do not have the same restrictions as American cartoons or animation. So I get people out there are like, wait a minute, what about Adult Swim? What about when they turned Samurai Jack into an adult? Trust me when I say, as much as I love that, that does not hold a candle to anime. Trust me, anime can get worse. Much worse. And because of that, they're able to hit some really mature topics. Now, ironically enough, many studios, American studios, are investing in either anime like DC's doing with their Suicide Squad isekai, or they're making more and more adult action themed animation, which is great. And when it comes to anime, I usually look for fantasy anime or sci-fi anime. If there's action in there, I'm there. I love action anime. Not so much the touchy-feely love anime. I'm not a big fan. Just show me some action and I'll sit and watch and love it. Attack on Titan all the way. Love that anime. The animation was smooth and the action scenes were incredible. And with that being said, just because there's a lot of action in anime doesn't mean it will hook me right away. Because for me, the anime has to have a good plot, little fan service, or not a lot of it where it overshadows everything. Because some anime will have a really great plot, but also a lot of unnecessary fan service. Now, one of the most popular genres of anime is called an isekai. And that is the type of anime where I'm more critical than I usually am because it's been overplayed a lot, so it's hard to find the good isekais versus the bad because there's a lot of bad. Now you're probably wondering, what is isekai? I've heard you said it a couple times. So an isekai is basically a story of someone either dying or getting transported, reincarnated, getting sucked into a video game, or in basic terms, getting sent to another world. This has been an extremely common trope in recent years, with almost every year having multiple things of this type of premise. Now, there's a lot that suck. Again, it's super common now. 10 years ago, it was rare to find it, but my God, it's like everybody has this lazy idea. But there are a few that stand out and are awesome. Some of these include Overlord, the Saga of Tanya, Evil, something like that, ReZero, Konosuba, Skeleton Knight, and Reincarnated as a Slime. And this is just to name a few that comes to mind. Overlord is probably my favorite because unlike 95% of the other shows that I just listed, instead of becoming the hero of the world, he is the villain. And it's just amazing. And I love anime that follows the villain because it's not usually something we see a lot. And if the writing is perfection like it is in Overlord, you just have a fantastic watch. I cannot wait for the movie that's coming out this year. I'm going to be the first one in line. Now, if I had to put a number of how many or the percentage of how much of this category is filled with good anime, I'm going to have to give it about 15%. The 85 other percent, terrible. Yeah, it's just terrible. Usually when it comes to isekai anime, it's just usually an excuse for characters to have either a harem or just have multiple women. Again, it's when it comes to isekais, just be careful and read the reviews. Trust me when I say you'll thank me later if you read the reviews before jumping in. And because I'm very picky and critical of the anime I watch, the ones I usually watch tend to be the best anime. Again, this is my opinion. If you don't agree with it, you don't have to agree with it. That's the good thing about having an opinion. But again, because of my pickiness, it has led to me watching some legendary anime like Full Metal Alchemist, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Overlord, Reincarnated as a Slime, Dragon Ball, Naruto, Eraser, Spy X Family, Psycho Pass, Akame ga Kill, Hijame no Ippo, Attack on Titan, and many, many more. If I had to list the legendary anime I have seen, it's gonna take a while. But if someone is not an anime person or hasn't watched it and wants to get into it, it is very hard to recommend an anime to ease them into the world without scaring them off. Especially if this person has been to Comic-Cons and has seen the anime side of it. I apologize. Those people do not represent all of us, so please do not judge us. For the love of God, please do not judge us for the few or, sadly, the many. Oh God, there's so many. But which is why when I talk to someone who hasn't experienced the world of anime yet, I usually recommend Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood because it's a fantastic anime. It's short, it's only 60 episodes, so when they watch it, they can watch it from start to finish and kind of breathe in everything that's happening. Now, I've seen a lot of people recommend anime like Naruto, Dragon Ball, One Piece, and stuff like that, which is good. I'm not saying anything bad about it, but those anime have over 400 episodes between them. And One Piece, God, One Piece has 1,100. So when it comes to recommending anime, it's usually easier to start them off with a show that actually has an ending so they can be eased into the world. That being said, it's also a good idea to gauge how traumatized someone can get when recommending anime. Like I said, anime can be extremely mature, and letting them watch a crazy one off the bat may not be the best method, and they will stare at you asking you why if you do that. Because again, when it comes to anime, even the short ones are not for the faint of heart. Akame ga Kill is a good example, a short anime with a lot of heartache. Shoot, if your friend says they're starting to get into anime and have a list, it's best that you check that list to make sure they're not starting off with a cute looking anime, because those of us who are veterans in the anime world know that those are usually the most traumatizing ones, like Made in the Abyss, School Live, The Promised Neverland, just to name a few. Like I said, Japanese anime have different restrictions, and the cuter the anime looks, the more you're like, all right, I'm waiting for this ball to drop because it's going to get bad. So keep that in mind when you're about to jump into this world of anime. Ask your friends for help. Let them help you. Also, again, it's a good note not to judge everybody who does watch anime, especially if you swore off anime because you ended up watching one of the bad ones. Trust me, not all of us are like that, and not all anime are like that either. A lot of them teach some really good life lessons. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood teaches lessons on blind faith, tyranny, genocides, the plights of war and after. If I had to rank it, it's probably the number one of my favorite anime ever. Again, I'm gonna hear everybody say, what about Dragon Ball? What about Dragon Ball Z? Dragon Ball Z is number 2. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is the anime that brought me in, so it's usually the one I recommend to people. And when it comes to this upcoming summer session, I will be looking forward to judging the upcoming anime and really hope to get some hidden gems. Also, before I forget, when it comes to deciding to watch anime either in its original Japanese language with subtitles or watching it dubbed, which means listening to it in whatever is your native language, I would wait a couple weeks until the dub premieres, because there's usually like a 2-week or 3-week gap between premieres, and then listen to both to decide. For me, I usually listen to the dub first, kind of gauge it to see how it is, and then sometimes switch over to the sub. Sometimes I like one over the other, and sometimes it's in between. When it comes to Overlord, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Tanya the Saga of Evil, Konosuba, Dragon Ball, Naruto, Attack on Titan, Reincarnated as a Slime, and My Hero, those are the ones I listen to dub, because for me the dub is better. Especially Konosuba. Fantastic dub. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, the best dub. I like the sub, but for me, the dub is definitely better. And again, that's up to the listener's discretion. So I really hope my explanation of anime, how I gauge anime and stuff like that can really help those who are wanting to get into this. Because again, anime is fantastic and it could be kind of off-putting, especially if you got introduced to it in the weirdest way. And for those who got introduced to it in Comic Cons, I apologize. Again, please don't judge us. We are not all like that. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this week's episode. And also, I wanted to remind you not to forget that this upcoming Friday is the premiere of Oak Bridge. So definitely tune in to whatever you listen to podcast because it's going to be a fantastic show. Again, that's going to premiere on June 21st. So definitely tune in and give them a listen. So with that being said, it's the end of this podcast episode. I hope you guys enjoy. See you guys next week. Sayonara, see you later, and have a good one. Goodbye.